You feel it, don't you? This sense that the life you are living is a collection of fragments. Broken pieces of who you were, who you think you should be, and who you are terrified you might become. You hold them in your hands, these sharp-edged shards of responsibility, desire, regret, and a deep, unnamed spiritual hunger. And you pretend. You pretend you are fine. You pretend the smile is real, that the exhaustion is normal, that the quiet ache in your soul is just a part of modern life. But your spirit knows the truth. It has been aching for an organizing principle, a truth so profound it can take all these broken pieces and bind them into something whole, something sacred, something with purpose. Joseph Smith once felt this. Standing in a grove of trees, a boy torn apart by the chaos of warring voices, each claiming the map to heaven, he was the very embodiment of a soul in disarray. His confusion was not a sign of weakness. It was the sacred ground upon which heaven chose to build. He was in the darkness just before the dawn of his calling. And if this resonates with you, if you feel that same tearing within your own soul, then understand this: you are in a holy place. Your chaos is not a curse. It is the unorganized matter from which God is about to create your world. If you feel this truth in your bones, if some silent part of you has been waiting for this permission to be broken, write just one word in the stillness of your heart or in the space below this transmission. Ready. Because the pattern for organizing chaos into covenant is eternal, and it is being offered to you right now in the midst of your beautiful, painful, and holy mess. The transformation begins not when you have all the answers, but when you are finally willing to stand in the full gravity of your question, looking up, expecting light. This is not a sermon. This is a recognition, a witness that the confusion you carry is the prelude to the clarity you crave. The Lord did not organize a church from perfect people. He organized it from fishermen, tax collectors, and seekers. He forged a covenant people from the dust of their own questions, and your life is asking for that same miracle of divine transformation. The very first verse of Scripture, the opening line in the grand narrative of existence, is a statement of this divine process. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. This is the starting point. It is the spiritual state of chaos, of unorganized matter, of potential without expression. This is where you find yourself. Your life, your heart, your purpose feels without form and void. You look out at the landscape of your days and see a murky darkness, a deep abyss of unanswered questions and unfulfilled longings. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. This is the promise. Before the light, before the command, before the separation and the naming and the ordering, there is the silent, brooding presence of the Spirit. It is moving over the chaotic waters of your life right now. You may not feel it as a thunderclap or a lightning strike. You may feel it only as a persistent ache, a divine dissatisfaction with the formlessness, a quiet yearning for light. Do not mistake this for mere anxiety or depression. It is the Spirit of God preparing the raw materials of your existence for a creative act. God's pattern is not to erase the chaos. It is to enter into it. He did not reject the formless earth. He hovered over it. He imbued it with His presence. And then He spoke. And God said, "Let there be light." This is the moment of personal revelation. It is the word, the idea, the insight, the quiet prompting that pierces the darkness. It is the beginning of order. What you must understand is that God is a God of order. The cosmos, in its breathtaking expanse, operates on laws. The seasons follow a pattern. The planets hold their orbits. There is a divine rhythm, a sacred geometry to all of creation. And you, a child of that same God, are meant to be a reflection of that same order. Your inner world is not destined to be a maelstrom of conflicting desires and paralyzing fears. It is designed to be a holy temple, a place of peace, of structure, of consecrated purpose. The restoration of the gospel through the prophet Joseph Smith was, at its core, an act of reestablishing this divine order on the earth. It was a gathering of scattered truths, a clarification of clouded doctrines, a reinstitution of priesthood authority, the power to act with heaven's endorsement and to create sacred, binding order through covenants. What He did for the world, the Lord desires to do for you. He wants to take the scattered truths of your identity, the clouded doctrines of your self-worth, and the chaotic energy of your daily life, and organize it all through the power of a personal, binding covenant with Him. Your life is not a random collection of events. It is a sacred text waiting to be translated. It is a temple waiting to be built. The chaos you are experiencing is not evidence of God's absence. It is the undeniable sign of His impending arrival. He is moving upon the face of your deep, preparing to speak the light into existence that will begin the glorious and sometimes arduous process of organizing your soul. The first principle in this sacred act of creation, this movement from chaos to covenant, is one of the most misunderstood and yet most powerful concepts in the spiritual universe: the law of consecration. We often think of consecration as giving away something polished and perfect, our time or our talents once we have them all figured out. But the truest, most potent form of consecration is to offer up the mess. It is to take the unorganized matter of your life, the confusion, the pain, the failures, the gnawing uncertainty, and place it upon the altar. You must stop fighting your chaos. Stop hiding it. Stop being ashamed of it. Instead, you must lift it up with both hands and say, "This is what I have. This is my formless void. This is my darkness upon the face of the deep, and I give it to Thee." Joseph Smith did not enter the sacred grove with a scroll of theological treatises and a perfectly ordered soul. He entered with the raw, bleeding wound of his confusion. His offering was his uncertainty. His sacrifice was his desperate need for an answer. That was the consecrated gift that heaven accepted. This is the paradox you must embrace. Your greatest weakness, the very thing you are trying to hide from God and from yourself, is the precise raw material He requires to perform His work. Your anxiety is the energy He will transmute into focused faith. Your broken heart is the fertile ground where He will plant the seeds of divine compassion. Your sense of being lost is the open space into which He will speak a new direction. Consecrating your chaos means you cease to judge it. You stop labeling your struggles as evidence of your unworthiness. Instead, you begin to see them as the substance for your sanctification. Imagine a master sculptor standing before a rough, jagged block of marble. The sculptor does not curse the stone for its roughness. He does not lament its lack of form. He sees within the raw, chaotic block the potential for the masterpiece. The roughness is not an obstacle. It is the opportunity. Your life right now is that block of marble. You are looking at your own jagged edges, your own imperfections, and you are judging them. God is looking at the very same life and seeing the angel trapped within. To consecrate your chaos is to hand the chisel and the hammer to the master sculptor. It is an act of profound trust. It is the prayer of surrender that says, "I do not know how to shape this. I do not know what it is meant to become. My own efforts to smooth the edges have only created more fractures. I surrender the outcome to You. Work upon me. Create from my confusion a vessel of honor." This is not a passive resignation. It is an active, courageous choice. It requires you to show up every day, to look at the disarray of your emotions or circumstances, and to mentally or verbally reconsecrate it. "Lord, here is my frustration today. I give it to You. Here is my fear. I consecrate it to Your purposes. Here is my exhaustion. Use it to teach me stillness." This daily practice of consecration is what keeps the channel open. It is what allows the Spirit to continue moving upon the waters of your soul, preparing you for the light that is to come. Stop waiting to be perfect before you come to God. Offer Him your magnificent, holy, and beautiful chaos. It is the only gift He has ever truly asked for. The second principle, the hinge upon which the door of heaven swings open, is the formulation of a true question. Revelation is not a monologue from God. It is a dialogue that begins with the integrity of our asking. Before the pillar of light descended, before the Father and the Son appeared, there was a question, born of authentic inner turmoil, that a 14-year-old boy carried into a grove of trees. Which of all the sects was right, that I might know which to join? This was not a casual inquiry. This was not a question of intellectual curiosity. This was the cry of a soul. It was a question that had weight, a question that had behind it the full force of his desire for salvation. The heavens are not moved by trivia. They are moved by the profound sincerity of a heart seeking its way home. Look at your own life, at the chaos you have now consecrated. Within that swirling vortex of emotion and circumstance, there is a core question waiting to be unearthed. Most of us live our lives asking shallow questions. What will make me happy today? How can I get people to like me? How can I avoid discomfort? These questions keep us trapped on the surface, endlessly rearranging the deck chairs on a ship that is drifting without a rudder. A true question, a sacred grove question, emerges from a deeper place. It is the question that remains when all the noise has been stripped away. It is the question that keeps you awake in the quiet hours of the night. It is the question that contains both your greatest fear and your deepest hope. Perhaps your question is, who am I meant to become? Not what job you should have, but what character you are meant to forge. Perhaps it is, what is the one thing I must do that no one else can do? Not a question of pleasing others, but of fulfilling a unique and divine appointment. Perhaps it is, how can I break this pattern that has haunted my family for generations? A question of healing and legacy. Finding your question is an act of spiritual archaeology. You must dig through layers of social conditioning, fear, and ego. You must be willing to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. What is the central conflict of your life right in this moment? What is the one answer that, if you had it, would begin to bring order to everything else? The power of a true question is that it acts as a spiritual focusing lens. It gathers the diffuse, scattered light of your consciousness and concentrates it into a single, powerful beam. When you articulate your question, you are telling God and your own soul what truly matters. You are defining the terms of the search. Without a clear question, personal revelation often feels vague and disconnected. It might come as a fleeting feeling of peace or a random good idea, but it lacks the power to reorient your entire life. But when you have a core question, you create a vessel for the answer to be poured into. The answer might not come immediately. It might not come as a voice from heaven. It may come as a sentence in a book that leaps off the page. It may come in the words of a trusted friend. It may come as a gradual, dawning realization that grows over weeks or months. But the answer will come because a true question, asked with real intent, creates a spiritual vacuum that heaven is compelled to fill. Spend time in silence. Take your consecrated chaos, your jumble of feelings and fears, and sit with it. Ask yourself, what is the question at the heart of all this? Do not rush for an answer. Let the question itself form. Write it down. Speak it aloud in your place of prayer. Refine it until it feels heavy, true, and real. Joseph's question was the key that unlocked the dispensation of the fullness of times. Your question, asked with the same sincerity, holds the key to unlocking the next dispensation of your own life. The third principle that follows the consecration of chaos and the formation of a true question is the absolute necessity of solitude. Revelation is rarely a committee decision. The most profound, life-altering communications from the divine are nearly always delivered in the sanctuary of stillness, away from the clamor of the crowd. Joseph had to go to the woods, to a place where he had previously designed to go. This was not a random, impulsive act. It was an intentional retreat from the world. He had to physically separate himself from the noise of the revivalist preachers, the opinions of his family, and the social pressures of his community in order to create the sacred space required to hear a voice that was not of this world. We live in an age that is hostile to solitude. The world screams for our attention from 1,000 different screens. Our pockets buzz with the demands of others. Even when we are alone, we fill the silence with podcasts, music, and endless scrolling. We have become, in many ways, allergic to the quiet. But the voice of the Spirit is not a shout. It is a still, small voice. It is a whisper, and a whisper can only be heard in the quiet. Your personal grove is waiting for you. It may not be a cluster of trees behind your farm. It may be a chair in a corner of your home in the pre-dawn hours. It may be a walk in a park without your phone. It may be the 10 minutes you spend in your car in the garage after you get home from work, before you walk through the door into the beautiful chaos of family life. The location is less important than the intention. The purpose of this solitude is not simply to be alone. It is to be alone with God. It is to create a consecrated space, free from distraction, where a different kind of conversation can take place. In the world, you are a collection of roles: parent, employee, spouse, child, neighbor. In your grove, you are none of these things. You are simply a soul, standing naked and honest before your Maker. This is why solitude can be so terrifying. In the silence, we are forced to confront the things we use the noise to escape: our fears, our insecurities, our unresolved grief, the sheer magnitude of our core question. The silence forces an encounter with the self. But it is precisely in that uncomfortable, unvarnished encounter that God can finally get a word in edgewise. When you retreat to your grove, you are making a powerful statement. You are saying that your connection with heaven is more important than the immediate demands of the world. You are prioritizing the eternal over the urgent. This act, in and of itself, shifts the spiritual energies in your life. It signals to heaven that you are serious, that you are not just hoping for an answer but are actively creating the conditions to receive one. Do not underestimate the power of small, consistent acts of solitude. 5 minutes of intentional silence is more powerful than an hour of distracted prayer. The goal is to build a rhythm, a habit of retreat. Just as you feed your body every day, you must create moments to feed your spirit in the quiet. In that stillness, you begin to notice things. You notice the subtle shifts in your own heart. You begin to discern between the voice of your own anxiety and the gentle prompting of the Spirit. You begin to feel, perhaps for the first time, that you are not alone in your struggle, that a divine presence has been there all along, waiting patiently for you to quiet the noise and listen. The answers you seek are not out there in the world. They are not in another book, another podcast, or another person's opinion. They are waiting for you in the stillness of your own sacred grove. You must have the courage to go there, to sit in the uncomfortable silence, and to listen with the ear of your heart. The order you crave will be born in that quiet space. The fourth principle is perhaps the most difficult and the most crucial to understand, for it governs the moment just before the breakthrough. It is the law of opposition. Before the heavens opened, before the pillar of light descended, Joseph was seized by a darkness so profound, so real, that it threatened to destroy him. He was overcome by an astonishing power that bound his tongue so that he could not speak and filled him with an unspeakable horror. This was not mere self-doubt. This was not a simple loss of faith. This was an active, intelligent, and malevolent opposition. He was on the very threshold of the most significant event in modern history, and the forces of chaos rallied in a final, desperate attempt to stop him. You who seek to organize the chaos of your life into a covenantal order must understand this pattern. The moment you consecrate your chaos, formulate your question, and retreat to your solitude to ask it, you will encounter resistance. This resistance may not come in the form of a visible demonic power. It will be more subtle, more personal, and far more insidious. It will come as a sudden, overwhelming wave of doubt. The question you felt was so important will suddenly seem foolish and childish. The spiritual feelings you have had will be dismissed by your own mind as emotionalism or wishful thinking. The very idea of a personal God who cares about your small life will strike you as absurd. This is the first line of attack, intellectual opposition. The next attack will be emotional. You will be flooded with feelings of unworthiness. All your past mistakes, your weaknesses, your character flaws will be paraded before your mind's eye, each one presented as irrefutable evidence that you are not worthy of a divine answer. You will feel a profound sense of despair, a spiritual exhaustion so deep that the act of prayer itself feels impossible. You will feel utterly and completely alone. This is the darkness that binds the tongue, the spiritual paralysis that makes you want to simply give up and retreat back into the comfortable noise of a life without questions. This moment of intense opposition is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is the definitive sign that you are on the right one. It is not an indication that God has abandoned you. It is proof that the adversary knows you are about to connect with him. Darkness is always most frantic, most violent, in the moments just before the dawn. The chaos you seek to organize will not yield peacefully. It will fight back. It has a vested interest in keeping you confused, fragmented, and powerless. When you feel this opposition rising, you have a choice. You can believe the voice of despair and retreat, concluding that your quest was a failure. Or you can do what Joseph did. In the moment of his greatest extremity, when he was about to sink into despair and abandon himself to destruction, he exerted all his power to call upon God to deliver him. This is the moment of emotional surrender. It is the breaking point. It is the point where your own strength is utterly insufficient. It is when you have to abandon all pretense of control, all reliance on your own intellect or emotional fortitude, and cast yourself entirely upon the mercy and power of God. It is the prayer that comes not from the lips, but from the very marrow of your bones. Deliver me. Understand this. This breaking is not your destruction. It is your liberation. It is the shattering of the ego that stands in the way of true revelation. The opposition is allowed, in part, to bring you to the end of yourself, so that you can finally discover the beginning of God's power in your life. When you feel that darkness closing in, do not panic. Recognize it for what it is. It is the threshing floor. It is the refiner's fire. It is the sacred and terrible sign that you are on the threshold of light. Hold on. Call out. Exert every particle of faith you have left, even if it is only the size of a mustard seed. The dawn is coming. We have now arrived at the fifth principle, the insight that I urged you to wait for. It is the one meant for you today, because it is the very architecture of the peace you seek. The first law of heaven is order. This is not a quaint religious saying. It is a profound cosmological and psychological truth. When the light finally broke through the darkness in the sacred grove, it was not a chaotic explosion. It was a pillar of light, descending gradually, with form, with purpose, with a specific location, exactly over his head. When the divine beings appeared, they were not a swirling mass of energy. They were distinct personages with bodies, with voices, with an ordered relationship to one another. This is my beloved Son. Hear him. The first message of the restoration was a message of divine order, clarifying the very nature of the Godhead, which had been confused for centuries. This principle of order is the antidote to the chaos that has defined your life. You have been living under the tyranny of entropy, the natural tendency of all systems to move toward disorder. Your spiritual life, your emotional life, your relationships, your very schedule, they have been drifting toward chaos because they have not been anchored to a divine pattern. To invite order into your life is to consciously and deliberately align your actions with the laws of heaven. This begins in the smallest, most mundane aspects of your existence. Joseph was later commanded to build a temple, a house of order, a place where sacred ordinances were to be performed in a precise and unvarying sequence. Your life is also a temple. How are you ordering it? Does your day begin with a connection to heaven, or with a frantic dive into the chaotic stream of the digital world? The simple act of starting your day with 5 minutes of silent prayer or scripture study before you touch your phone is a powerful declaration. It is you saying, I will establish a heavenly pattern first. I will invite the spirit of order into my day before I invite the world's chaos. Look at the physical spaces you inhabit. Your home, your car, your workspace. Are they reflections of chaos or order? This is not about sterile perfection. It is about creating an environment that calms your spirit rather than agitates it. The act of bringing order to a small physical space, making your bed, clearing your desk, cleaning the kitchen, has a profound spiritual echo. As you bring order to your outer world, you are giving your inner world permission to do the same. This is the principle of as without, so within. The law of order also applies to your thoughts. Your mind can be a terrifyingly chaotic place, a tempest of anxieties, resentments, and self-criticism. Establishing order in your mind means learning to act as the gatekeeper. It means choosing what you will meditate on. It means consciously replacing a thought of fear with a statement of faith. It means forgiving an old grievance not because the other person deserves it, but because the resentment is a source of disorder in your own soul. The highest expression of this law is found in the covenants we make. Covenants are the ultimate organizing principle. They are sacred, two-way promises with God that structure our lives around eternal priorities. When you make and keep covenants, you are voluntarily placing your life into a divine pattern. Your choices are no longer governed by fleeting moods or social pressures. They are governed by a sacred commitment. This does not restrict your freedom, it magnifies it. It is like the banks of a river. The banks do not restrict the river. They give it direction and power. Without the banks, the water would be a stagnant swamp. With them, it becomes a mighty current. Your chaos has felt like a swamp. Covenants provide the banks. Begin today. Choose one small, manageable way to introduce divine order into your life. One simple pattern. Perhaps it is a commitment to be in bed by a certain time so you can wake for a moment of peace. Perhaps it is a commitment to speak with kindness to your family for a single day. Perhaps it is the simple act of tidying one room. Do not be overwhelmed by the scale of the task. Remember, God created the world in stages, day by day. Order is not an event. It is a process. But it is a process that, once begun, invites a power and a peace that chaos can never counterfeit. This is the law that will build the temple of your soul. The sixth principle addresses the deep-seated human desire for certainty and control, and replaces it with a higher, more powerful spiritual law. The principle is this: revelation comes as a blueprint, not a photograph. When Joseph came out of the grove, he did not have a complete, fully formed picture of everything that was to come. He did not know about the Book of Mormon, the restoration of the priesthood, the building of temples in Kirtland and Nauvoo, or the trek west. He had one piece of knowledge, one foundational, world-altering truth. God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, lived, they were separate beings, and the churches of the day were not theirs. That was it. That was the first piece of the blueprint. The rest would be revealed line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Many of us are paralyzed in our chaos because we are waiting for the finished photograph. We want God to show us the entire plan for our lives, from beginning to end. We want to know if the career change will work out, if the relationship will last, if the sacrifice will be worth it. We stand at a crossroads and demand a detailed map of both paths before we are willing to take a single step. And so we remain standing, trapped in the paralysis of our own demand for certainty. This is a profound misunderstanding of how faith works. Faith is not knowing the whole path. Faith is trusting the source of the light enough to take the next step. God gives us blueprints, not photographs, because the process of building is what forges us. If He simply handed us a finished life, a completed temple, we would have no hand in its creation. We would not develop the spiritual muscles of trust, the resilience of overcoming obstacles, or the wisdom that comes from acting on partial light. He gives us the next instruction, the next line on the blueprint, and waits to see what we will do with it. Our obedience to that one instruction is the very thing that qualifies us to receive the next. Think of it as navigating a dark road at night. Your car's headlights do not illuminate the entire journey from your home to your destination. They illuminate only the next 100 feet of road. Yet, you are able to make the entire journey in confidence, not because you can see the end, but because you trust that as you move forward, the light will continue to move with you, always revealing just enough of the path for you to proceed safely. Personal revelation works in exactly the same way. The Spirit will give you the next 100 feet. It may be a prompting to call a friend. It may be an instruction to forgive someone who has wronged you. It may be a nudge to start a new, healthy habit. It is often something small, something that seems completely unrelated to the large, complex question you have asked. But this small instruction is the next line on your personal blueprint. Your task is to act on it without knowing how it connects to the grander design. This requires you to release your white-knuckled grip on the outcome. You have to be willing to act on a prompting even if it doesn't make logical sense, even if you can't see how it solves your main problem. This is the essence of walking by faith. It is in the acting, in the laying of one small brick according to the instruction you have received, that the next part of the plan is revealed. Joseph had to wait for 3 years after the first vision before the next major instruction came with the visit of the angel Moroni. 3 years of holding onto that one piece of the blueprint, living according to the light he had been given, while waiting for more. Can you do that? Can you treasure and act upon the small, quiet promptings you receive today and trust that they are part of a divine architectural plan for your life? The order you seek will not be delivered to you as a single, overwhelming event. It will be built, brick by brick, precept by precept, by your own faithful hands, as you follow the unfolding blueprint of personal revelation. Your job is not to see the finished temple. Your job is to lay the next stone perfectly. The seventh principle marks the transition from the internal world of belief to the external world of action. It is the principle of translation. A vision, no matter how glorious, remains a fleeting, internal experience until it is embodied in the hard, practical work of creation. Joseph Smith was not just a seer of visions. He was called to be a translator and an organizer. He had to take the divine communication he received and render it into something tangible. Golden plates into a book of scripture, a heavenly mandate into an earthly church, a spiritual concept of Zion into a physical city. He had to translate the language of heaven into the labor of his hands. Your breakthrough, your personal revelation, the answer to your sacred question, will demand the same from you. The order you seek cannot remain a mere feeling or a pleasant idea. It must be translated into a new way of living. This is the moment where so many of us falter. We receive an insight, a powerful spiritual prompting, and we feel a surge of peace and clarity. We bask in the glow of the aha moment, but then we fail to do the work of translation. We fail to change our behavior, and so the chaos, which we had momentarily pushed back, rushes back in to fill the vacuum. If you have received an insight that you need to be more patient with your children, that insight is useless until you translate it into the specific, difficult action of taking a deep breath and lowering your voice the next time your 3-year-old spills milk all over the floor. If you have received a prompting that you need to leave a job that is crushing your soul, that prompting remains powerless until you translate it into the practical, fear-inducing work of updating your resume, networking, and sending out applications. If you have felt the spirit of order telling you to heal your body, that spiritual knowledge must be translated into the daily, unglamorous choices of choosing a salad over a cheeseburger and putting on your walking shoes when you would rather sit on the couch. This work of translation is the very definition of discipleship. It is the bridge between hearing the word and doing the word. It is often not glorious. It is repetitive. It is challenging. It requires discipline and consistency. Organizing the priesthood into quorums, establishing church governance, keeping records. This was the tedious, necessary work that gave structure and longevity to the initial spiritual outpouring of the Restoration. In the same way, creating a budget, setting a consistent wake-up time, planning your meals for the week, or scheduling a difficult conversation are the mundane but holy tasks that will give structure and endurance to your personal reformation. Do not despise the small, practical beginnings. The translation of your vision into reality will be a messy process. You will make mistakes. You will have days where the old chaos seems to win. This is not a sign of failure. A translator working on an ancient text does not get every word right on the first pass. He makes a draft, he revises, he consults other sources, he refines. You must give yourself the same grace. When you falter, you simply begin again. You recommit to the work of translating your inner conviction into your outer reality. This is how a covenant life is built. It is the constant, daily effort to align your actions with your highest spiritual ideals. The chaos in your life is a result of a misalignment between what you know to be true in your quietest moments and how you actually live your loud, busy days. The work of translation closes that gap. One disciplined choice at a time. One small act of integrity at a time. One moment of choosing the divine pattern over the chaotic impulse at a time. This is how a life is reformed. This is how a soul is organized. This is how chaos is transformed into a covenant. Now we must speak of the very structure that makes this transformation permanent. We must speak of the nature of covenant itself. In the chaotic, transactional world, we think in terms of contracts. A contract is an agreement between two parties, usually born of mutual suspicion, designed to limit liability. It is a document that says, if you do this, I will do that. But if you fail, here are the penalties. A covenant is something else entirely. It is not born of suspicion. It is born of love. It is not about limiting liability. It is about creating a relationship. A covenant is a sacred promise in which God, in his infinite power and grace, binds himself to you. He is the one who sets the terms, not because he is a dictator, but because he is an all-knowing Father who understands the precise path that will lead you to your greatest joy and potential. When you enter into a covenant, you are not signing a contract with a celestial administrator. You are being adopted into the family of God in a new and more powerful way. It is a spiritual embrace. God says to you, "I will be your God, and you will be my people. I will offer you my name, my power, my help, and my grace. I will bind myself to you, and I will never, ever break my promise. In return, you promise your will. You promise your loyalty. You promise your heart. You promise to walk in his patterns and to live by his laws of order. This is the great exchange. You give him your broken, chaotic, and finite human will, and in return, he gives you access to his whole, ordered, and infinite divine power. This is why covenants are the ultimate organizing principle. They infuse your life with a power that is not your own. When you are living in a covenant relationship with God, you are no longer operating solely on your own limited strength, your own fluctuating discipline, your own finite wisdom. You are yoked with him. When you are weak, he is strong. When you are confused, he is the source of all clarity. When you feel you cannot take another step, his enabling power, the grace of Jesus Christ, flows into your life and carries you forward. The chaos you have experienced is the natural state of a life trying to power itself. It is exhausting. It is like trying to illuminate a city with a single candle. Making and keeping covenants is the act of plugging your life into the divine power grid. Suddenly, the light is no longer dependent on the flickering flame of your own effort. It flows from an inexhaustible source. Covenants transform your identity. Before covenant, you are an individual trying your best. After covenant, you are a son or daughter of the covenant. Your name is linked with his. Your purpose is intertwined with his. Your life story becomes a chapter in his great, sweeping story of redemption. This provides a profound and unshakable sense of identity and purpose that the world can neither give nor take away. This is what Joseph Smith was commissioned to restore to the earth. The power of making binding covenants with God through sacred ordinances like baptism, the sacrament, and the temple endowment. These are not merely symbolic rituals. They are the authorized channels through which God's covenantal power flows into our lives. They are the way we formally enter into this sacred, organizing relationship. If you feel adrift, if your life lacks a central, organizing anchor, it is because you are missing the power of covenant. The transformation from chaos to order is not a self-help project. It is a covenantal partnership. It is the conscious and deliberate act of taking all the consecrated pieces of your life and allowing them to be structured, empowered, and defined by the promises you make with the God of order. What does it feel like to live in this covenantal order? How does the texture of your daily existence change when you shift from being driven by chaos to being structured by covenant? The first thing you will notice is not the absence of problems, but the presence of peace within them. The chaotic life is a reactive life. You are tossed back and forth by external circumstances. A difficult email, an unexpected bill, a critical comment from a loved one. Each event triggers a wave of anxiety, anger, or despair. Your inner state is wholly dependent on your outer world. The covenantal life, however, is a responsive life. You are anchored to something deeper than your circumstances. Your identity is rooted in your relationship with God, not in your daily performance or the opinions of others. So when the storm hits, you are not capsized. You may be rocked, you may have to work hard to keep your balance, but your anchor holds. You have access to a reservoir of peace that is independent of your situation. This is the empowered stillness that becomes your new foundation. The second change is a transformation of your perception of time. In a chaotic life, you are always running out of time. You are hurried, stressed, and constantly feel behind. You are a slave to the urgent. In a covenantal life, you begin to experience what could be called sacred time. You understand that your days are a gift, a consecrated space in which to do the Lord's work. You learn to prioritize the eternal over the immediate. You find that by putting first things first, your connection with God, your core relationships, you somehow have enough time for everything else that truly matters. You are no longer a slave to your calendar. You are a steward of a divinely allotted portion of eternity. The third shift is in your decision-making. The chaotic life is plagued by decision fatigue. You are paralyzed by 1,000 choices, big and small, with no clear framework for how to make them. The covenantal life provides that framework. Your core question becomes, what choice will bring me closer to God and help me honor my covenants? This simplifies everything. It doesn't mean the choices are always easy, but it means the criteria are clear. You have a spiritual North Star to navigate by, and the Holy Ghost acts as your divine compass, confirming the right path. Finally, and most profoundly, living in covenantal order changes your relationship with your own weakness and failure. In a chaotic life, failure is devastating. It is proof of your inadequacy. It sends you into a spiral of shame and self-recrimination. In a covenantal life, failure is reframed. It is seen as a necessary part of the process of growth. Because your worth is not based on your performance but on your identity as a beloved child of God. A single mistake does not define you. The covenant promises you access to the atonement of Jesus Christ, which is not just a safety net for sin but an enabling power for weakness. You learn to repent quickly, to learn from your mistakes, and to get back up, knowing that God's grace is sufficient to make weak things become strong. Living this way is not about becoming perfect overnight. It is about living in a different state of being. It is a quiet confidence, a deep-seated sense of purpose, a resilient peace. It is the feeling of being aligned, of your inner world and your outer world slowly but surely coming into harmony with a divine, cosmic order. It is the rest that the Savior promised to those who would take his yoke upon them. It is the fruit of translating chaos into covenant. We have come on a long journey together, from the honest acknowledgement of our inner chaos to the peaceful vision of a covenant-ordered life. But the journey's end is, in truth, its beginning. The principles we have explored are not a checklist to be completed, but a cycle to be lived, over and over again. The pattern is eternal. Joseph entered the grove as a boy, but the process of consecrating chaos, asking sincere questions, seeking solitude, overcoming opposition, and translating revelation into order defined the rest of his prophetic life. Each new challenge, each new phase of the restoration, required him to begin the cycle anew. And so it is with you. The great transformation of your life will not be a single event, but a lifelong process of becoming. You will organize one area of your life into covenantal order, only to discover a new, unexplored continent of chaos within you that requires the same loving, patient process. Do not be discouraged by this. This is the curriculum of mortality. This is how souls are forged. The quiet transformation call for you today is not to go out and do something grand and dramatic. It is to return to the beginning. It is to find your own grove, even if it is just for a few precious moments. It is to look with unflinching honesty at the specific chaos that is troubling your soul right in this moment. Do not look away. Do not numb yourself. See it, feel it, and then, with all the sincerity you can muster, consecrate it. Offer that specific mess up to God as your holy sacrifice. Then, in the stillness, allow the true question at the heart of that mess to form within you. What is it that your soul is truly asking for? Clarity? Strength? Forgiveness? Direction? Give that question voice. And then listen. Listen with an intensity you have not allowed yourself before. Be prepared to face the opposition that will inevitably arise, the voices of doubt and despair from within and without. Recognize them as the guardians at the gate of revelation, and press forward with a simple, desperate faith. The promise of the pattern is that if you do these things, light will come. It may not be a pillar of fire. It may be a single, simple thought, a feeling of peace, an idea for the very next step. That is your blueprint. That is your line upon line. Your sacred work is to then take that piece of light and translate it into a single, concrete action. That is how the new order begins. That is how the covenant is written upon your heart. He organized chaos into covenant. Your life is asking for the same transformation. The materials are before you. The master craftsman is ready. The pattern has been set. The only remaining question is the one that only you can answer. Are you ready to begin?